Good day to all our listeners. I'm Lisa Wilding Brown, Chief Research Officer here at Innovate MR. We're a leading global sample and technology firm. And welcome to another episode of our podcast, Innovate University, where we explore various pressing topics in the industry and really seek to share meaningful thought leadership and insightful content with the market research community. Today's podcast is focused on a topic that doesn't seem to get much attention across MR publications, sampling in the Asia-Pacific region. Based on discussions with clients, we feel this is a really underserved area of the world as it relates to sampling, which is really remarkable given the high demand we are hearing about from our clients. So as such, we decided to invite two folks from our very own team, Nagai and Gerken. So we have an in-depth discussion on really the various nuances of conducting research in APAC. So welcome, Rie and Jeff. You guys have so much extensive experience in market research with really a specific expertise focus in APAC. And I would say you are arguably the most experienced MR professionals within our industry as it relates to APAC. And I'm so lucky to call you my colleague. So welcome, and I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thank you, Lisa.
Wow, it's great. You guys have, both of you combined, so much experience in the APAC region. So, you know, I'm really excited to sort of pick your brain and share all your insights with our listeners. So let's jump right in. We have a ton to cover, but I think one area that a lot of our listeners worry about is the issue of quality and fraud mitigation. APAC has really been seen as a hotbed for quality issues in our industry. What do you think the main drivers are for those quality issues in the APAC region? Jeff, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. You know, what we're all hearing about today, and when I'm talking with clients on a daily basis about this, is that China is really becoming a hotbed for, fraud and panel houses and panel farms and things of that nature. And one of the main reasons behind this, if you dive deep into China and you look at some of the tier 4, tier 5 regions of China, the hourly wage can be anywhere from $1 to $1.50. And so if you think of all of the stories you've heard of sweatshops and the foundries and working in really hard conditions, and you think about it, if you could sit behind a computer in a air-conditioned room and take, let's say, a B2B study and make $10, $15 on a 15, 20-minute survey, I think you would jump all over that. And so what's happening is they're starting to build out a lot of these panel houses and panel farms. And it's not really just, I feel, affecting APAC. It's even affecting, worldwide. But a lot of it is coming out of APAC because people just don't understand the language and the culture that comes in all the different countries. I mean, if you take China, the culture of China is much different than the culture of Japan. So you just take those two as a start, and you can see how you start throwing in Vietnam, or you throw in the Philippines, or any of these other, Singapore, any of these other countries. There's just such an unknown to people in the US and a lot of the clients that I speak to on a daily basis in the US, that it's just kind of more the wild, wild west, and they don't know how to understand it. The language is much different. And so that fraud is just becoming rampant, and it's something that's really becoming a real problem in APAC.
How about you, Rie? Any thoughts to share and expand upon what Jeff just said there?
Yeah, it's the same thing I'm experiencing on a daily basis. It is the unknown to the clients who are outside of APAC. What is going on in APAC? How bad it is? We've all heard of the fraud in China, but what is it all about? So, the security measures we take, we really need to properly implement when you run research in Asia. They are professionals when you talk about fraudsters, and like Jeff mentioned, they're being paid to answer in that nature with the survey. So being aware of that is very much a key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of economic motivation, as Jeff touched on. And I also think, it's just such an unknown area of the world for a lot of U.S.-based and European-based researchers. And the challenge is as researchers, we're asked to do global studies, in multiple geolocation and multiple markets. And so that's one area where, we often lack a lot of internal resources for quality control and quality assurance. And so that's something that clients, I think, are dealing with. They may not have an internal resource that can read Chinese and review open-end data. And so I think the key there, and the suggestion I always make, is go out and find partners that have that expertise, that understand what it takes to build panel in APAC and to review data and analyze data in Chinese or Japanese or one of the other languages, because I think that really makes all the difference. Okay, so I have another question for you. Rie, let's start with you. Our survey audiences for Innovate MR span across multiple countries in APAC. What are some of the key similarities and differences within those various markets for survey research, and really how do they impact delivery?
Yeah, from my perspective, APAC region can be divided into two areas. There's the developed markets like, say, Japan or South Korea, where the internet penetration is literally 100% over there, where, obviously with those markets, online methodology can suffice most of the audiences, even the tougher ones. But then on the other hand, there's new developing markets like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, where, the population is growing, but the internet penetration is still quite lower than a lot of people think, where we still need to apply mixed methodology. It really depends on what audience we're all trying to reach. So as a result, B2B or, particularly youth or elderly audiences are relatively easier to approach in countries like Korea or Japan, but it could be very hard in Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, so forth. So, there's similarities, differences in that element. And then it really is easy to forget when you look at it from outside how small a market countries like Singapore or Hong Kong or even Australia actually is. So, the same sampling plan wouldn't really apply, compared to the US or UK or the other major Western countries. So we really need to be aware of that.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really great point. I think I've seen that in my past life, where researchers will sort of apply the same recommendations for, a readable base in the UK and the US and Australia, and that may not be consistent between those three countries, given the population and internet penetration rates in certain regions, as an example. So those are just all things I think to keep in mind. What are some key challenges for designing effective surveys in the APAC region? And I'd love for you to touch on mobile too, because I know that that's an area that's very near and dear to our heart, and we have a lot of opinions on that. So maybe Rie, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, some of the challenges, and I do mention this a lot to my clients too, about the sensitive topics in APAC. Maybe it might not come across sensitive in some of the countries like US or UK, but let's say healthcare projects. A lot of the survey respondents in Japan or Korea, just as an example, take those questions quite personally. So, response rates could be a lot lower than you think for that type of topics. Political questions in countries like China, Hong Kong, Taiwan can be very, very tricky. Panel providers can receive a lot of complaints by asking the wrong questions. Singapore is the same. Certain domains can potentially get banned if the survey includes anything of political content. So that's pretty tricky. Religion is the same. Indonesia or Malaysia, certain Muslim countries like that. Alcohol-related content, for example, would be considered very, very insensitive. That type of cultural sensitivity can be very, very challenging, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I can just jump in there.
Please do, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say I could jump in there and just say there's things like the national holidays. you need to remember that national holidays in APAC are not necessarily the same as in the US. So, for example, Christmas isn't a big one over in APAC, but when you get into their New Year's celebrations, those are big ones that can shut down for a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks. You know, going on even further, internet bandwidth is a big one over in APAC. I mean, you can have fluctuations of, you know, 0.5 megabytes, and this kind of might touch even more into mobile. You know, when clients are asking, you know, what should we do? How should we write our questionnaires? You know, you really shouldn't get more than 10 minutes when you're talking about doing research over in APAC, because you know, the majority of everybody's going to be doing it on their mobile device, and with the internet bandwidth going from 0.5 megabytes up to 15 megabytes within a 10-minute span, you could have a lot of drop off and have people fall out, you know, really quickly. And especially in countries like China, where a lot of people might be on VPNs that just kind of go in and out. It's something to really take into consideration when you're writing those surveys and keeping everything mobile friendly, because that's really what you're going after. Even if it's not mobile sample, you need to know that the majority of people taking the surveys are doing it on their mobile devices.
Yeah, that's a great point. I still find it crazy that it's 2018 and we're still talking about mobile and really trying to transition more of our research to mobile. But I think it is a really relevant point to make in APAC, given that there are really large concentrations of the population that you know, only have a mobile device, and that's really how they're engaging with research companies. And so it's really important to make sure that those surveys are designed for a mobile audience in mind. Jeff, kind of expanding a little bit about, you know, tips and tricks by country. You know, any thoughts on, you know, the various websites that have been banned in China? Obviously, it's a communist country. There's been a lot of restrictions around internet usage. How does that affect our ability to engage those participants?
Well, here's the real tough part. There's so many companies out there that claim to do, you know, sample in APAC, and unfortunately, there's a lot of aggregating going on. There's a lot of just sample being pulled off of, you know, exchanges that you've heard of out there, and people and companies that just don't really understand where the sample's coming from. And so it's really important that you work with a company or a provider that understands APAC. Otherwise, you're going to get, you know, this river of sample that's going to come in, and trying to put the fraud mitigation factors in there and trying to figure out what's real and what's not can be really tough. And so, you know, speaking from the Innovate side of the business, Innovate has done a fantastic job of being, you know, people like myself and like Rie who understand that industry and work with in-country providers, and we can speak their language and we can have a one-on-one conversation with them. And you know, our vetting process at Innovate is really crazy if you really come down and look at it. What we expect from our providers and what we put them through to make sure that what they're giving us is real and is going to benefit our clients.
Absolutely. I mean, I know firsthand you guys have been a huge help to us on the panel recruitment side by being able to liaise with companies and different websites to recruit into our panel that otherwise would not have been a viable source for us, given that, you know, they only speak Japanese or they only speak Chinese. So that's been super, super helpful to give us access to really unique, exclusive sources of traffic for our panel. And of course, share your expertise along the way. So I think we'll stop there, although I would love to continue the conversation in the future, but I'm mindful of our time. So thank you so much, Rie and Jeff, for your time today. If the folks listening would like to learn more about APAC and conducting research and procuring sample in the APAC region, we'll include your contact details on the screen of this podcast so that folks can reach out to you should they want to continue the conversation. So thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in, and we'll look forward to the next session in the near future. Take care, everyone.